temporarily in an effort to help stop the spread of the coronavirus in Oregon. Since then, we've implemented further orders asking Oregonians to stay home to the maximum extent possible, closing down restaurants and bars, and requiring social distancing at other businesses across the state. I know how hard this is on every single Oregonian, and I thank you for your sacrifice. I also know that the measures that we've put into place are necessary actions right now to save lives. I wish I could make it easier for everyone, and I wish I could eliminate the frustration that so many of us are feeling right now. My top priority will always be the health and safety of Oregonians. That is the forefront of my mind with every single decision that I make. To the best of my ability, I also want to provide Oregonians with as much information I have as quickly as possible so that you may have some certainty in these very uncertain times. We want to give you the ability to make plans for your children's education and for everyone's health and safety, especially because I know that social distancing orders have required huge sacrifices from our children, and that missing school is especially difficult on our students and their parents. To all the moms and dads, I can't imagine what you're up against, balancing parenting during this very scary crisis, while I know many of you have either lost a job or are a first responder, or are trying to work from home with your kids there, all the time worried about education and figuring out homeschooling. This is really hard on parents, too. To that end, I can't imagine it's a surprise to anyone that we've really been struggling with how best to provide educational guidance during these extraordinary times. We have your kids and all Oregon students at the forefront of every decision that we make about school. Their health, happiness, and safety is a top priority. I know there is a lot of anxiety over how we will move forward. I know our students are extremely disappointed they are missing classes, prom, and graduation ceremonies. But the best thing we can do for the health of our children and for thousands of educators across the state is to give everyone certainty by announcing the decision today to close in-person classes for the remainder of the school year. School and learning will continue as best as we can using remote means. A core value of our schools is to place the student and their learning at the center of all of our decision making. We understand the incredible disruption this can have on each student's education. We all see the isolation and the challenges for our families, especially those who rely on school as a centering place for connection, community, and comfort. Every state in the country is struggling with these decisions. I am proud of the way our students have navigated this new world of unknowns and the efforts of our teachers, educators, and parents to rise up and meet the demands of this difficult new reality. This decision is important because it is about safety. It is first and foremost to protect our kids and our teachers. It is impossible to adhere to social distancing measures in our classrooms and our schools. Oregon's education workforce is typically older and potentially more vulnerable to COVID-19. We need to make sure we're keeping our students, teachers, principals, and school staff safe as well. There are also operating costs to schools in preparing for a potential reopening. Deciding to close now for the rest of the school year allows us to invest time and resources in the delivery of learning and supporting our students through distant education and remote means. I know this is certainly not what any of us were hoping for, but it is truly the best decision for our system. Now, for our high school seniors who are just weeks away from finishing out their last year of high school, I also want to provide the plan and how we will move forward. The Oregon Department of Education, in consultation with teachers and school districts across the state, has put together a plan that will honor the great work our students have completed through March, when we temporarily closed school, and still provide a pathway toward graduation. Concerns about equity for our houseless students, our students of color, our low-income students, and our vulnerable students are at the forefront of my mind when making public policy decisions that impact all Oregonians. This is part of the reason why I support this plan put forward by the Department of Education. All our high school seniors who were on track to graduate prior to the statewide school closure will receive a passing grade for their courses. This allows us to maintain Oregon's current graduation requirements. I refuse to punish students, many who have been in Oregon schools for over a decade, because they could not attend classes for a little over 2 months. However, for those students who did not have a passing grade in mid-March and need time to improve their grades in order to pass one or more classes needed for diploma, I'm asking our school districts to focus their efforts finding creative ways to get these seniors the extra attention they need to get across the finish line. It encourages our schools to develop alternative learning plans for our seniors, and we are already seeing schools deploy creative tactics that are locally driven and reflect the best interests of our kids. I expect nothing less in helping sure that seniors can graduate on time. In addition, I'm extending the existing executive order for Oregon's post-secondary education system to continue following distance learning through the end of the academic term. Oregon's public universities are also committed to ensuring that incoming freshman students who intend to enroll at our state institutions are considered fairly in light of the educational interruptions they have endured in their final year of high school due to COVID-19. No student admitted to public universities this fall will have their admission taken away due to changes in this new grading policy or inability to complete their coursework as long as they still graduate. So again, I know that schools closing for the remainder of the year is not the news that you had hoped to hear. However, I hope the plan to graduate our seniors and our commitment to continued learning removes some of the stress of uncertainty for our students and our parents across the state. I also want to take a moment this afternoon to really honor the educators who are dealing with this unprecedented situation. Our teachers, our principals, our superintendents, our counselors, bus drivers, and food service staff. I know how much you love your students and how much you love teaching. This is a really difficult time to be a teacher and to try and reach all of your students, assist them, and help them grow. I honor your creativity and public service during this historic time. Thank you for everything that you do. I think we're happy to take questions at this point.
The Oregonian. You mentioned that you'd seen some districts adopting creative tactics, locally driven, to help kids get across the finish line. You mind spelling out what some of those tactics are?
Sure. I'll let Director Gill come on up. But Oregon students are at the forefront of every decision we are making about school during this crisis. Their health, happiness, and safety is a top priority. Director Gill.
Can you repeat that question for me?
Yeah. So the governor said that
Yeah, absolutely. So last week, the department put forward guidance to all of the school districts in the state called Distance Learning for All. So this is the request for all of our school districts to think about how they will continue learning through the end of the school year. What that calls for is kind of a four-step process. The first step is to contact our students and reestablish that relationship between the educator and the family and the student. It's really important for our kids to know that there's another trusting adult out there that cares for them. Second, to ensure that they are physically safe and healthy, that they have access to meals and shelter. Third is to attend to any social, emotional, and mental and behavioral health needs that they may have. And then we dig into the learning. And this does look different across the entire state. We have to recognize that our communities in Oregon and the school districts that serve them are all unique. I want to be clear that distance learning is not synonymous with online learning, although it is online learning in some cases. It can take on the look of a teacher working with a large group of students over a video or audio conference call. It can look like one-on-one phone calls and video calls, or even posting a YouTube of a teaching session and then the students receiving that. We have places in Eastern Oregon where they don't have great internet connections, where our school buses are delivering learning packets to students, and they're bringing those back to the teachers and getting evaluative feedback on those. So it looks different all across the state, but what I can say is our educators are continuing to hold themselves to that high standard that they had when they were in front of the classroom and doing in-person education on a day-to-day basis. And they are striving to make this work for our kids across Oregon. And it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift for the educators. It's a heavy lift for our parents as well.
Elizabeth Miller from Oregon Public Broadcasting.
Yes.
What resources is the state offering school districts so they can implement this for all?
Yeah, so we have really a lot of resources in place for our school districts right now. So the guidance includes planning documents for a school district to understand where it's at and its capabilities right now. We do have school districts in Oregon that are what we would call quadrant 4 in our tool, that they are ready to implement online learning. So they have the provision, the tools to do that, and we have districts that are farther from that or have students that don't have access online. So we're asking every district to start where they're at, use our planning tool to walk through what else they may need to do to prepare both their educators and their families. And then we provided a lot of online resources, including what a sample schedule of a day of learning would look like in distance learning, a lot of open access tools that align to Oregon standards so that both families can have access to those as they're looking for kind of independent learning materials for their children, activities to do to stay healthy and active. It's okay to be outside in your backyard and do some activities as well. And then a lot of activities or a lot of resources for our teachers to use as well. And then what we're adding to that this week is what the governor focused on, and I really want to ensure that folks know that we put this guidance out for this year's seniors. This year's seniors, we want them to know one thing for sure, and that is that we believe in them, I believe in them, I know Governor Brown believes in them, their teachers believe in them, their families support them day in and day out. We know that they can succeed. And what I would ask every senior out there to do is, if you haven't heard from your school yet, please know that they are trying to reach you. So reach out to them. The school's ready to support you on your pathway to graduation, helping you with financial aid forms and getting applications to community colleges or wherever you're headed next. They want to support you on your path to graduation. Go ahead.
Is there any standard for all districts to go by in terms of how classes are structured or what the data looks like in terms of student learning?
Yeah, so the question is there a standard for distance learning? And our guidance does provide a standard or recommendations. It actually mirrors the recommendations that you'll see in some other states like Washington and California, Kansas, Utah. This is something that's happening across the country. So we are working together with other states to create these standards and ensure that our students have an access to a continuing education, and that is included in the guidance. Yes.
I'm thinking about the kids who are not on track for graduation. Typically, they're sometimes people who don't have an advocate at home for them. I mean, how are the districts going to make sure that these kids are contacted, that they're going to get their resources that they need, and make sure it's the same across the state?
Yeah, so the question is, what do we do for the students who weren't on track to graduate in March when our schools closed? And one of the things this model does is it centers in equity. So what it does is it frees up the teachers of seniors, the counselors in the building, the administrators, to ensure that they are circling around every student who was failing one of the required courses that they had for graduation, seek them out, and then ensure that they have a pathway to that. We have a lot of ways in Oregon for students to earn credits in high school. So it could be an online course that would be right now considered a traditional way. We also have models for students to earn credit by proficiency, to show that they have an understanding of the content and to get them to where they need to be to pass that class. Now, we can do this, and our schools will be using their resources to try to accomplish this in June, which is the typical time that students graduate. But this can happen all the way through to August 31st. And these students can still be a member of the class of 2020, a graduating member of that class. Yes. Okay, I'll take it. So this is a question about graduation ceremonies, commencement ceremonies, baccalaureates, senior trips, senior breakfasts. Just think about all the sort of milestone events that our seniors are missing this year. This is a real challenge, and frankly, we don't know if those will be able to be held this year. We will continue to watch the data. We'll work with the Oregon Health Authority to understand when social distancing can be lifted or when there may be opportunities to hold those kinds of events. The guidance that we're putting out today does recommend to school districts that they consider rescheduling some of those events for when we know social distancing can be lifted. It asks them to look at other alternatives like online events. It asks them to, the one thing that they don't do is not celebrate the class of 2020 and the individual accomplishments of these seniors. It actually asks them to work with the students, with the families, with the community at large, and think of creative ways to celebrate this class. This is a class that we know are developing a lot of resilience right now, and we believe they're ready for their next steps in life.
It might be a little early to ask, but do you anticipate any sort of spillover effects into the next school year, particularly for juniors when you're talking about graduation requirements, admissions requirements for college, et cetera?
Yes, so this is the question about juniors. We're actually working on the next set of guidance that is actually for 9th grade through 11th grade to ensure that we're ready to understand how this is all impacting them. They are all also earning credits towards graduation eventually, and we want to be sure that they're not held back in any way because of this short-term closure. One of the things that the governor pointed out is that when you think about our seniors, they have gone to our public schools for 12 years and 7 months. The part that they're missing and that we're overcoming through this distance learning opportunity is just 1.7% of their time spent in school. So these kids have accomplished a lot of learning. They have worked hard, and we want to honor that for our seniors. And we're going to turn right around as soon as we answer our district's questions about this guidance and get right into the guidance for the 9th through 11th grade to ensure that they're continue on their pathway to graduation.
This is Lisa from Coin. How can you assure parents that students are not going to move around when there's a patchwork of classes, formats, websites, apps, not just within districts, but within schools themselves? Parents are already very frustrated with all this.
Yeah. Should I repeat this question? Okay. Just repeating the question. This is a question about the frustration that parents feel right now as they're just receiving kind of a patchwork of different approaches to distance learning. And this is what I want to say. Just this is frankly for our families, for our educators, for all Oregonians, is that as we move through this, we have to understand we've been doing this in an iterative process. We've really been trying to make decisions as we understand conditions on the ground in our battle against COVID-19. And we all have to have a little bit of grace and patience with one another. Our schools are used to operating with their doors open and students coming into the classroom and greeting their teachers every day. That's the norm for us. And we're asking everybody, our families, our students, and our teachers to switch over to serving kids when they can't see them physically day in and day out. They're working really hard, is what I would say. We have guidance out. There is standards around it. The districts are working hard both at the same time they're trying to reach students and provide some materials to train teachers in a whole new way of providing instruction in Oregon. We're asking them to begin to do that in earnest next week. And we're going to see that improve day after day after day as our educators get a handle on this new way of doing business. So the next 8 weeks of school, I would say you're just going to see improvement week after week after week.
Will school be extended into summer?
So some districts offer summer school programs, and that will be a district by district decision. And some of those are also based on district funding and how they make their decisions. I think we do have districts in Oregon right now that are, depending on where we're at with social distancing at the time, or considering early starts into next year as well to get a leg up for students.
Question on the phone, if I can.
Sure, and we're going to open it up now to questions on the phone. If you can make sure your line is muted while you're not asking a question so that we don't get any cross noise. We're going to let people ask their questions, and then if there's too much interference, we'll go through the list and have people take turns. So go ahead.
This is Kelly Ogden from K2 News. I have a question for the governor specifically. Talking about test kits, why did you say that we'll have 20,000 test kits here in Oregon with a new contract signed if in reality there was no such contract signed? Also, what do you say to Oregonians who do feel like maybe you weren't telling the whole truth when you had the opportunity to correct yourself when the contract was actually signed, but you waited until an open records request was made by journalists in the city?
Look, what I would say to Oregonians is things are rapidly evolving, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and we're providing as much information as we can as quickly as possible. In terms of testing generally, we know that we have inadequate testing in the state of Oregon. I was just on the phone with my colleagues, the governors across the United States. Except for the 10 or 12 hot spots states, all of these other states are wrestling with the issues of adequate testing. I've been talking with hospitals and hospital systems the last several days, and they are frustrated by our lack of testing capacity. We're working with the private sector to increase our testing capacity. And honestly, we've got champions in Washington, D.C., like Senator Ron Wyden, who is calling the CEOs of these companies to make sure that Oregon gets their fair share. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hargunani.
To follow up, though, real quick, the question is and remains, when you realized that it wasn't going to be 20,000, but 10,000 instead, why not tell the people of Oregon that that was actually the case and that the numbers were incorrect back on March 18th when you announced 20,000 tests coming to Oregon?
Hi, this is Dana Hargunani, Chief Medical Officer, Oregon Health Authority. I just want to follow up on the governor's comments. Our agency was able to secure a price agreement with Quest, a commercial carrier, commercial company that can provide testing. This has been in conversation. We have been working hard to identify these types of agreements whereby we know we're preparing for potential surge in cases, and we want to be prepared to be able to procure testing equipment as fast as we can to protect our healthcare workers. This has been an ongoing effort, as you've heard. We are working hard across our state and with all federal partners to secure as much testing as we can. We know that there are new equipment on board, there are new testing becoming available, and we are going to continue to work that make that available to Oregonians.
Governor, is it possible to get an answer to that follow-up question?
Next question, please. Next question.
Can we get the next question, please? Is there anyone from the Portland Business Journal on the line with a question? How about the Oregonian? Is there anyone from the Associated Press with a question? Are there any other outlets on the phone that have a question?
Nigel Jacobs,
Willamette Week, go ahead.
yeah, thanks. Governor, are you going to be giving school districts any guidance as to whether they should be considering laying off non-essential personnel because clearly we're facing a budget crunch?
Generally speaking, as you are well aware, we passed the Student Success Act several months ago, and school districts across the state were ramping up to hire new staff. We have directed school districts to put those plans on ice, and the rest of it goes on a school district by school district basis. Obviously, we've asked our school personnel to continue to provide services and support to students across the state. For example, I know that school bus drivers and lunch personnel in the Jervis district are continuing to deliver cold lunches and breakfast to their students across their several-mile district. And I know that school personnel around the state are working hard to ensure that our students have access to school lunches and school breakfasts, as well as support that they might need.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, good. Julie Silverman from Portland Monthly. I'm wondering whether there have been any plans made in the possible event that school won't be able to open in September.
At this point in time, we're obviously watching the data and the modeling. What I want to say to Oregonians is that I am incredibly grateful for the sacrifices that you have made by complying with our social distancing measures. We know that those social distancing measures are working, and that is critically important. At this point in time, I know our districts are focused on providing support and services for our students, and I'd like Director Gill to respond further.
That's okay. I think that where I'd like to take that is that we know that our teachers are trying to change the way they're doing business, and they're trying to connect with our families. And again, it would be the same plea that I made about our seniors. If you're a family or a student that hasn't been contacted by your teachers, please know it's not because they're not trying. I have talked to many teachers around the state. I've received emails from them. They are desperately trying to connect with you so that they can understand how to regularly work with you and your family. So please reach back out to your school if they haven't found you. And then with that, I really want to recognize too that this model asks an awful lot of our families and caretakers of children at a difficult time in Oregon, right? We know and we have to understand that our families are also under stress. Some of them work in the healthcare system. Some of them have family members, extended or right in their homes, that are ill. Some are struggling to get meals on the table because they've been laid off or furloughed. Some are trying to work from home while also taking care of little ones. All really significant challenges. And for us to deliver education, the teachers and educators can be a part of that. They can direct their professionals. They do know what they're doing. But all this is happening in the child's home. And so we recognize it asks a lot of our families as well. And again, just to seek that grace and patience as everybody comes together to support Oregon's kids at this time and help them move through this crisis. And I'm hopeful that we open up for a new school year full of hope in 2020-21.
I have questions for Governor Brown and I'll combine them into one. The first is why she felt the Oregon medical experts panel that she appointed was needed, and also the perennial question. At this point, what does she foresee looking ahead if schools are closed, as far as what that means for businesses and others, and specific factors she'll be looking at when lifting her various executive orders? Thank you.
Thank you, Dick, for that question. I think your question goes to when will our businesses across the state reopen? And the best and the shortest answer I can give right now is we simply just don't know. As I mentioned earlier, the social distancing measures that Oregonians have worked really hard and sacrificed much to follow are working. We also know that if we take our foot off the brake and begin to eliminate all of those social distancing measures, the virus numbers then again go through the roof. So at this point in time, we don't know. Foremost in my mind will be the health and safety of Oregonians, and obviously ensuring the health of their livelihoods in the future. And your first question, Dick, again, please.
Why you thought it was important for you to have this medical advisory panel that you appointed yesterday?
So I appointed a medical advisory panel to help inform my decision-making. We are going to be faced with some challenging decisions over the next several weeks, and I wanted to have the best physicians from all around the state and nurses to help inform my decision-making in terms of how do we move forward. As you know, there's no roadmap. None of us have ever lived through anything like this. I should say, except for the veteran down in the Lebanon nursing home who survived the Spanish flu and then has also survived the COVID-19 virus. But most of us have not lived through anything like this. There was no roadmap. And I thought it was really important that I get perspectives and expert opinions from all around the state as we move forward and continue to face these challenges.
Governor Brown, Gillian, just follow up. Governor, we haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. What's the status of your health, and have you been retested?
I've had a cold. That's why you haven't seen me for a couple of weeks. Some of the folks here can see that I'm still coughing. And I have not been retested. My last test was negative. I'm in really good health.
Governor Brown, this is Gillian from
Jillian.
Governor Brown, this is Gillian from Associated Press. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask, I think Oregon is known to have one of the lower graduation rates in the country. How concerned are you that this delay will impact the efforts to improve those graduation rates or further lower them? I'm sure that's something you're concerned about.
I'm certainly concerned about Oregon's high school graduation rate. I am really pleased to see that the efforts that our students and teachers and districts around the state are paying off. We have been able to improve Oregon's high school graduation rate roughly 5 percentage points in the last handful of years. We obviously want to keep improving that high school graduation rate, and some of the changes to education, including more opportunities for hands-on learning, and will help, I think, continue to improve our high school graduation rate. In terms of this decision, I'm really proud of the way that our director of our Department of Education worked collectively and collaboratively with superintendents, with principals, with teachers and other folks on the front lines to come up with a plan that will focus our resources on the students that need it the most and need that extra help to get across the graduation finish line. Director Cole, Colt Gill, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. I would just I just want to reassert that I'm in regular meetings with our superintendents across the state of Oregon. We have 197 school districts and 19 education service districts that serve our kids. I'm on a video call with them at least 2 times a week since this event has begun. They are pushing me to provide the resources they need, and I'm reaching out to them to understand those needs in a better way. The thing that they have been asking for the last 2 weeks was this guidance. We delivered the guidance, and those superintendents, those principals, those counselors, those teachers, they've all been asking for it because they want to go to work and serve those seniors and get them onto their next steps in life. We've done this in a way that maintains Oregon's rigorous credit requirements. There is no other state that requires more credits for graduation than Oregon. We provided a clear path to graduation for seniors who were on track to graduate prior to the statewide school closure. And we've created a pathway that ensures that schools can focus the resources that they have now to first support the students who need to complete additional credits in order to graduate, and then prepare all graduates, especially our historically underserved students, on their pathway, their next pathway in life. Those financial aid applications, those scholarship applications, community college applications. We know some branches of the military where students have already signed contracts are willing to bring those students in earlier so they can begin earning paychecks. Those are the things our teachers and our counselors and our principals and superintendents will be doing, and they're anxious to get at that work.
Thank you. Arturo Sarmiento from KTUP Radio Poder. So my question is, in our communities, we have immigrant families who are not still proficient in English. So how the education department is addressing this matter in order for those kids to get the proper resources and materials they need to continue their education and achieve all the learning goals they are supposed to reach?
This is a great question. So this is a question about our migrant families and families that may not have English as the language that they speak in their home. And again, we're working closely with our school districts. One of the things that we've said over and over again is that we need to work to meet every student, every family, and frankly, every educator and school district where they're at and work from that place forward. So our school districts do work with families of multiple languages across the state of Oregon every single day. What's really important right now is that when we make that first outreach to families, whether that's by phone or whether that's by, we've seen school buses full of teachers go through neighborhoods waving to their students to let them know that they're there for them. These contacts have to be in the language of the home, and our school districts know that. The guidance that we put out says that, and we will work to support those school districts in getting that done. We know that our migrant families are some of the most impacted at this time. Right? They are having trouble getting meals on the table. They can be more impacted because they have fear of entering the healthcare system. We're showing them the pathways to enter that are safe for them and don't risk their immigration status. Those resources are on the OHA website. Those resources are on the Oregon Department of Education website. They're in multiple languages, and we're here to serve those families because those families are the people we care about in Oregon.
And we have time for just about 2 more questions, so we'll take 1 more question from the phone and then 1 question from the room. Go ahead.
Can I ask the question?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Natalie Page with the Statesman Journal. I know that you've talked previously about requirements for schools if they want to continue receiving state school funds. How does this change that, if at all? And will it further affect the student investment account earning additional state and federal funds into school districts?
Yeah. So this is a question about, does this impact what's required under the current executive order for our school districts? So this is Governor Brown's executive order 2008. In order for our schools to remain to continue to receive funding, there's a variety of things that they have to do. So the first one is that they have to provide meal service to our students. We have districts right now that are actually providing more meals per day than they were when they had their doors open. So that, I think, also speaks to the needs of our families. Our school districts are also asked to be ready, and some of them are currently providing emergency childcare for healthcare workers and frontline workers and other essential workers. And our school districts are asked to provide distance learning, to connect with families, to make sure that they have what they need to be learning ready, and then to begin to dive into the most important learning. So those things are all required for them to continue to receive funding.
Does that mean that the earlier guidance was also that they had employees on their table and be there?
Right. So, yeah, and that continues as well. So you have to pay your employees, and the school districts are allowed to direct those employees to complete these emergency and essential services. So one more question from the room, I think, if you have one.
I know distance learning doesn't equal with online learning, but it sounds like a lot of districts are trying to do that and want to make that work for their students. So how is the state supporting schools and students that need devices, that need internet access?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a question about supporting districts that want to go to online learning, but some students either don't have internet access or don't have the device to do that learning on. So we have school districts around Oregon that have begun to partner with different organizations to put laptops or tablets or other devices in students' hands and provide Wi-Fi hotspots. Last week, we had school districts around the state complete a survey to let us know what their needs were around technology. We've also been reached out to by the Oregon Business Council, by Philanthropy in Oregon, that want to come to the table and review that survey and help us consider how we can, as a state, address those needs for districts for students for the remainder of this year. At the same time, we also have to recognize that Wi-Fi hotspots typically work off cell service, and we have great swaths of Oregon that do not receive cell service. So this is an option that is available in parts of Oregon, and we can work with school districts and our business community and our philanthropy community to try to meet these needs, but there will be places in Oregon where we need to look at it differently.
We did have a legislation in during the 2020 legislative session to fund the Rural Broadband Office. Representative Marsh was leading the charge on that. That's been a bill that my team and I have been partnering with her on. I would fully expect this issue to be back in front of the legislature when it convenes again. I think it's critically important that we do everything we can to make sure that our rural communities have access to broadband. And I will just say, there are a couple of school districts that I think are already providing the ability for students to learn online. I had an opportunity to tour Ione School District a few years ago. They provide their middle schoolers with pads to take during the day, and then high schoolers get to take their computers home. Their graduation rate in Ione is probably close to 99%. It's a very small school district, I think less than 100 students, but they've been able to do it. I know that Google partnered with the Duffer School District to provide Wi-Fi on the school buses. So there's some really creative, innovative solutions out there, and we're obviously going to have to work very hard to make it much more universally accessible in communities around the state.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you, everyone, for coming or for calling in or for watching online. So thank you so much.